That's so true. And this is such a big part of what happened to me recently. And I'm glad you mentioned it because I took the time to share what was happening. And people were like, wow, we're really learning what no, I didn't know what it was like to go through chemo. I was live. I did a TikTok live at chemo one time, just like, here's what
Yeah.
it is in case anybody's ever wondering. I never knew what it was.
Right. Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey friends, welcome back to another awkward episode of the Own Your Awkward podcast. Today I am super excited. I reached out through someone I was following on TikTok, and it's Helen Polise. Helen, thank you so much for joining us. You put out
I'm so
such good
excited.
energy, and it's amazing.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And this is so different than any other podcast I've been on. So I'm very excited to talk about new things.
Excellent. We're going to get into it. We're going to learn
Yay.
about you. We're going to find out about your awkward. I like to start out, though there's so much going on in the world. I like to start out kind of asking my guest, what is the most positive thing you see right now?
I'm going to speak to this personally just because for those who don't know in the audience, I experienced cancer. I just beat lymphoma, and I was diagnosed in June where I started to go blind, and then they finally found it 2 weeks later, but I was literally almost blind. And there is so much negative talk about social media, and I'm here to tell you the world and people in it are beautiful. And they came out in droves when I started to post about what was going on to the point where I could cry talking about it because it was so overwhelming to me. I kept thinking, oh, people are going to be, why is she sharing too much information? And then the opposite happened. It was beautiful,
Oh,
truly.
wow. I love that. And I think that's such a good thing to remember because it's easy to paint social media as evil, but it's powerful, and that power can be good or bad.
It was so powerful that I hold on to the comments, and I really have learned from my comments over the course of being on TikTok. And a lot of people were saying, oh, we came here to learn about TikTok, and now you're teaching us about life and how to handle adversity. And it was like I was crying because the comments were so nice. And so I think there's so much good in the world. And I think, unfortunately, people who focus on the negative, they're only going to see the negative things on their feeds when they're kind of curating their content. So scrolling by things that are negative and welcoming in positivity is one way to really change the narrative in your social media. If you're feeling like all I see is bad things, well, that's because you're watching them, because otherwise you'd be seeing good things if you were watching good things.
I love
That's
that
a little
that
lesson. That's a
strategy.
lesson.
It is. Just scroll past it. Don't bring it into your life.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people. I saw you. I don't know what point I started following you or first stumbled upon your video at some point in the last 6 months or so. And I was just with the way you explained something that you were giving a tutorial on, I was like, oh my gosh, this is helpful and timely. And I didn't know anything about your journey before then.
Ah,
And then as I started seeing a couple of your other videos
yeah.
pop up, I'm like, I love this woman even more. Like
It's
this
really
feels so
funny
good.
because I want to talk about that because in the beginning when I started on TikTok in 2020, that all the people that were advising, the TikTok advisors, were like, you got to stay in a niche in order to grow an audience. You got to be in one lane. And I was like, I don't know. I don't have a niche. Like, what am I doing here? I'm just like dancing with people in this New York City, or I'm trying to. And then I was like baking things in my kitchen. I was doing baking videos. So it's been very interesting for me because I never followed that rule because I wasn't trying to grow a business at all.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just here to have fun. So I'm going to bake today, dance tomorrow, and I'm going to do some trends the next day. And I just had a good time. And I think what I learned from that is when I found my lane, which is obviously I'm a good teacher and people love my lessons. And how it started was one person asking me to, how did you do that thing that you did in the baking video? I was like, oh, I'll make you a tutorial because I did a little transition. And so then I was put on the map for the TikTok teacher. And then I saw the comments and everybody wanted to learn from me. And I thought, oh, I guess I should just make tutorials now. And I said to myself, no, I'm still a whole person with a whole other
Yeah.
bunch of things going on in my life. So I just kept doing that. And I would trickle in that tutorial every so often. Those are the ones that got the most views. But every single time I post other things, I don't care if they get 10 views, 100 views. I do it for me. And I do it for people who want to see something besides just a person teaching you something. I
Right.
love it.
Yeah. And that it was actually kind of fun. I think the first couple of videos I saw were tutorials. And then when I saw you just having fun doing the thing, I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah,
So,
so much fun. I love to just take when I see the young people do those really cool trends with the swish transitions and hair change and
yeah.
outfit change, and I'm like, oh my God, I have a great idea for this. And then I'll spend like an hour in my house moving around doing the things and making those types of videos. And I'm like, I don't even care if they get views. But what happens is because I'm not the norm to do a video like that, I
Hmm.
tend to do pretty well because they're like, check her out. Like she can do these transitions as good as, a 20-year-old. And
Right.
that's because of my production background. Like I really know how to do it. So it's
Yeah.
really
Well,
fun.
it shows and they're fun and they're engaging. And I love it. So
Thank you. I
cannot
love it
say
too.
enough good stuff. And there is a link below in the comments section and in the description. Be sure you are following Helen all over social media because you're going to have a good
Awesome.
time.
You
Uh,
definitely are.
so, and I wish that if you are listening, just look up the video so you can see Helen smile because it radiates.
You're
You
so
can't help
cute.
but smile. So I
Thank
just got
goodness
to
I
get that
had that
descriptor
because then
out.
everything else went away. And I was like, oh God, at least I still have my teeth.
Right. At least this is
Thank
still
goodness.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Helen, I
so
would love to just let you share with the world. We want to know what's your awkward thing that you've had to
okay.
own.
All right, here we go. And I mean, I'm 62, so there's been probably a lot of awkward. So I'll tell you something that's most relevant to what I'm doing now and how I had to overcome it. So when I've been behind the camera my whole life, producing commercials, directing people behind the camera. I never get in front of the camera. As a matter of fact, I have a casting guy he would say to me, "Oh, you'd be perfect for this. Won't you come in and do a casting?" And one time I sucked it up and I was like, "All right." I went in front of and I was so awkward and so uncomfortable and
Mm,
could not be myself. Like when I tell you, it was a disaster. And I left there and I said, never again. I'm never doing it again. Okay. Don
mhm.
Case, shout out to Don Case Casting because he will know that this happened and I'm going to direct him to this. So, anyway, I got in front of the camera in 2020 and I'm like, what am I doing? This is TikTok. I had to start doing something because work dried up. There was
Oh,
no production happening. I was bored and I'm a creative person. I had nobody to film. So I turned the camera on myself and it was terrifying. Now, I was doing it a little bit on Instagram, but I'd always be doing it, but then focusing the camera on someone else. Like even
okay.
if I'd interviewed someone when I was doing like on the street, I would do an interview, meet somebody, and I'm like, oh, I got to tell you about this person. I would put the camera on them and take it
Hmm.
off of me all the time. So in 2020, put myself in front of the camera and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this and make a video. And I just did not feel comfortable speaking. So I only did it with music and motions and
Okay.
transitions and dancing. My awkward is speaking on camera was terrifying. I
Mm.
can remember one of the first videos that I made on TikTok, and it was like I was on TikTok for a year before I spoke almost. I
Wow.
was, yes. Isn't that ridiculous? I couldn't do it. I was like, I even tried to do it. I made a video and I want to go back and find it at some point. It's probably early on where somebody had gave me a shout out for something and I duetted and I wanted to thank her and I could barely do it. I felt so unnatural. I felt so uncomfortable. I'm like,
Mm.
everybody on this app is so much smarter, funnier, clever. They
Oh,
speak well. I didn't think I could do it. And I'm just going to tell you, you can do it. You can
I
do it
love that. Now
because
you
I'm
touched
doing
on a
it.
little bit, but so what was it that got you willing to actually do? I mean, you mentioned
Hmm.
you wanted to thank somebody. Was
I'll
that the
tell you.
thing? Was it was actually doing it for someone else?
Well, actually, that first time I spoke was like such a test, and then I said no, I can't even. I was so uncomfortable, I didn't want to do it again. So
Mm,
what spurred it on, and I think this is what is going to explain to you, to everybody in the audience listening, what you can do to overcome your awkward, which I know is a question, but what happened to me is when I was doing the dancy things and I was doing the thing where I'd have eggs and then I would hold my hand like this and then go like that and then they would magically be cracked in a bowl. So I was doing a lot of little tricky things with my baking videos. I had one of my followers, Pammy Cakes, say to me in a message, "Oh, how'd you do that? Can you explain it to me?" And I used to text her things of how to do it.
oh,
So
uh-huh.
this time I said, "I'll make you a tutorial." And I
So,
made her a tutorial and I was so comfortable talking because it was about the things I knew.
mm,
It was about
okay.
something that I'm so confident. I didn't have to think about a script. I didn't have to think about what do I want to say. I was like, oh, I'm just going to teach her how to do it. That I could tell somebody. And so
Right.
the lesson there is if you're speaking about something that you know well, or it's part of you, or it's like a passion or something you enjoy so much, you won't have any trouble speaking about it. And
Yeah.
that kind of changed. It just like flipped a switch for me. And I was like, ah, this is what I'm doing on TikTok now. This is amazing. And I love it so much.
Wow.
Hey, you
That's
can't
so
shut me up.
amazing that it was like that quick because I feel like sometimes I've got to do this, I got to build up to it.
No,
And
it
and
was
that's
literally like that. And I think I'll tell you another. little secret, which is I still think of one person watching my video. And when I make the videos, I still think like this is my imaginary friend, and I'm teaching my imaginary friend how to make this recipe or how to do this TikTok. And so I speak to the phone like you're in the room with me. I'm gonna show you how to do this. Do you see that little button there? Oops, I missed it. And I
Yeah.
literally do it like real. I'm not like acting. I'm not an actor. As a matter of fact, if I
Mhm.
had to act, I'd probably panic. So it's more like I'm just like, let me teach you how to do this. And I try and think of somebody who was like me, like didn't know in the beginning. You're pushing the buttons, you're trying to figure it out. What does this mean? How would I have liked it to be explained and taught to me? And that's how I teach it to you.
Right.
So
I
it's
love that. And
thinking of that personal thing, like thinking of it as one person.
that really comes through because like when I'm watching your videos, I feel like you're just talking right to me. Like, oh, you
Right.
know what, Andy, back up. It's here. And you're really good about pointing out like, oh wait, before you go over here, you're gonna want to do this, and I'll explain why in a minute. So it
Right.
like saves it in my head that there's a reason why we're
Yeah.
doing whatever we're doing. And
I just love that you appreciate it.
oh, I do, and it is so much like I'm in the room with you when we're going through that, and that's I think what I liked about the first time I saw you do it, because it was, I think the first tutorial that I saw wasn't even a trend I had ever had pop up, but you were explaining how to do it, and I'm like, well, that was really cool. And then all of a sudden I started seeing that trend,
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
does. All of a sudden, every other video was that trend. I was
Mm,
like, well, I know how to do it, so I can see the magic behind that.
so good. So good.
Now,
It's funny because we're doing a thing where my daughter and I are sending out a newsletter every week where we share trends, because a lot of
mhm,
times they don't come up on your page. Like she'll see some and I don't see it, and I see some and she doesn't see it. So we are doing a thing now where we've teamed up and we're actually sending out a weekly newsletter. I mean, I would mention this at the end, but because it's relevant to what you're talking
yeah,
about,
oh
I'm just
yeah,
going to point it out. So what we'll do is we'll see, oh, these three things are trending, and then also people that don't want to do trends will be like, and here's three other ideas if you want to do something and not do a trend. Because every week when you're trying to be a creator or you're trying to promote in your brand or do whatever, it's really hard to be creative every week. It's just like it just becomes unfun. And we
mhm,
want social media to be fun because people gravitate towards people who are having fun with it. So once
right,
it starts to get stale, people are going to see it right away in your content. So
mm,
anyway, just a little, I
yeah.
don't know if you knew that I had that, but now you know.
Yes, I do, and I have subscribed to it, and I love it
Thank you. Amazing.
because I am always feel like whether it's life or anything, I feel like I always start at the company. I get the job, and people are like, you should have been here back in the day, and that's how I feel like on TikTok or on social media. It's like the trend pops up. It's like you should have been on this 2 weeks ago, and I was like, okay, so now I'm putting mine out there. So having that is so helpful because it does put you in the moment, and
Yeah.
uh, and it
and
really,
they come fast too, and
yeah,
it's like sometimes I panic, like I'm like we find one and then we'll say we're going to put that one in the creative forecast, and then I'm just worried that by the time that email gets, and it's weekly, so it's by the time that
right,
email hits send, you don't want that one to be stale already. So it's like
yeah.
we're constantly updating it. So we'll set it up, and then on the literally the day before I look at it again, I'm like, well, is that one old now? Do we want to get rid of that one, and is there something new that came up? So I try to be very on top of that. That's important.
Yeah, because by the time you could be 6 days out by the time you're ready to send, which
Yeah. And it's not good if somebody's like, you're sick of a trend, because then it's going to cause anti-engagement. Like people are
oh
just going to be like, I cannot listen to that song one more time.
yes, yeah.
So
If I
there's
see
that.
one more, of the slow boats with the Titanic music,
Oh, I know. And right now it's Disney Cars. Do you know that one?
oh
It
yes,
just
I've seen that one. Yeah.
as soon as the newsletter went out, the next day it was like Disney Cars, Disney Cars, Disney Cars. I'm like,
Hmm.
did I do this? Because I don't know. Anyway, it
Right.
is funny though, because it shows that they are pushing that out. If
Hmm.
it's on your For You page again and again, that means that the algorithm is favoring it. So that's why it's a good idea to get on it. You just
Right.
want to be on it in the sweet spot, not when it's
Hmm.
like people
Well,
don't want to watch it anymore.
yeah, and that's a good reminder to jump on it right away. I used to save
Mm.
things in my favorites, like, oh, I should do that. And it's like, well, by the time I would come back to do it, the trend is gone. And so I've learned to
Yeah,
just either, if I don't have
got to
time to
do
do
it.
it today, just move on and watch for the next
Yeah.
trend.
Yeah, exactly. And that's good because there'll always be another one. You
Yeah,
know that, Andy. There'll always
yeah,
be another one.
definitely. So I am curious because you mentioned how you had been behind the camera, you were in production for so long. And when you started dancing, because you mentioned it took a year to start talking, but
Yes.
just getting in front of the camera, how
I
did
know.
that feel? Like just even visually being on
I
camera.
know. It's so bizarre. There's a few things with it. One is, and I'm older, so I I'm also conscious of like, oh, I'm older. I'm like, I don't like how I look or this or that. So I had to get over that hump. I've always been pretty much, I think age helps on social media because I
Mhm.
think we kind of care a little less. So as
Yeah.
soon as I started seeing that I was posting and nobody was noticing the things that I was noticing about me, I was my worst critic. I was like, oh, no one's noticing. They don't think I'm too fat. They don't think I'm too wrinkly. They don't think,
Oh,
I don't
right.
know, not to put myself down, but nobody else is pointing it out, the things that I see. So
Right.
I think that the positive feedback gave me more confidence. So it just kept kind of snowballing in a way.
Mm.
So in the beginning, it was like, I'm a goofball. I don't care. All right, whatever. A few people are seeing it. And then I'd started to be like, people like, girl, you go. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. So
Right.
I think what happens is we feed into those people that are throwing that positivity at us, which is, there's a lot of that on
Yeah.
TikTok, especially where people are like pumping you up. Hey, you go, girl.
Mhm.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm going. And then ignore those haters. Yeah, I'm ignoring them. I don't care. So even when you start to get haters, they don't bother you so much. And
Right.
I think that's it. I was always kind of an outgoing, dancer in the behind the scenes thing. I just never would put myself in front of the camera. So I didn't have to change my personality. I
Oh,
just
yeah,
had to
that's good.
be my own self on the other side
But you
of
had
the
to let the
camera.
world see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
sure have done that. I sure have done that. They've seen me in the spinal tap room getting crying before an injection. They've seen it
Yeah.
all pretty much at this point.
Yeah, which I think there's something to once you have that positive reinforcement, you realize that it's okay to put it out there, and even the
Yeah.
moments that are hard and that are tough, people need to see because they need to know me
Yes.
showing a great life doesn't mean that my life is perfect and I don't have bad
Right.
days. I'm just these are the days that I'm excited to dance. However, tomorrow I
Yeah.
might be crying under a blanket on my couch and
Yes.
I might not be posting that, but I'll be open about the fact that those days happen. And some days
Those
I'll
days
force
happen.
myself to be like, here I am,
Yeah.
live from under
This
the covers.
That's so true. And this is such a big part of what happened to me recently. And I'm glad you mentioned it because I took the time to share what was happening. And people were like, wow, we're really learning what no, I didn't know what it was like to go through chemo. I was live. I did a TikTok live at chemo one time, just like, here's what
Yeah.
it is in case anybody's ever wondering. I never knew what it was.
Right.
And so I think that when I started doing that, and people were like, oh, you're so positive. You're so, the fact that you have such a good attitude about this. So I made sure that, and I had to make an extra effort on this. Like when I was having a shitty day or something I was upset about, I purposely, as much as people are like, oh yeah, you're feeling terrible, and what's the first thing you do? Take out the camera? Yes, because
Mhm.
for me, I wanted to make sure that people were seeing it isn't all perfect. Like it's
Right.
great when I feel like dancing around and dancing in front of as I'm walking into chemo with my badass outfit or whatever I was doing for fun. But there was days where I was, oh my God, that spinal injection hurt so much. I came out of it crying. I was like, I'm taking out my phone because I want to make sure people know this is not a perfect journey. And
Yeah.
if I'm only showing the positive, I'm not being truthful. So
Yeah.
I had too many people with me on it, and I was not going to, lie. So that was a big thing. So then you could have people like, really, you need to take out your phone the minute you get to it. I'm like, well, yeah, because people think I'm always happy, and I want them to know this isn't a perfect thing here that I'm
Right.
going through. you
And
know?
and I feel like when you become in the position that you are of influence where people are watching you and following you, you feel a responsibility to
Yeah.
to like it's like you're filling in your best friend. It's like, oh, they're wondering how I'm doing. If I'm not out there for a
Yes.
few days or I'm not saying things, they need to know the whole journey.
Yes.
And as much as you can be like, oh, it's my privacy and whatever, well,
Oh my God.
that's
But
great, but you
these
cross
people,
that line.
we did cross the line, and those people are now in my life in a way. And even
Yeah.
though I don't know them, just like you're saying, oh, it's so cool, like I feel like I know you. It's
Right.
like there's thousands of people that feel like they know me, and it's hard for me to. I don't get overwhelmed thinking about that, but I do respect it. I respect it a lot, and I think
Mhm.
that one of the things that was happening to me was, well, for the 2 weeks I was blind, I couldn't post, and it was horrible. My daughter was living in Chicago, and so for those 2 weeks when I started to go blind, I don't even know if you know this story, Andy. To be
I heard
honest,
parts of it.
yeah,
I've heard you say bits and pieces of it, but I haven't heard the
whew,
whole story.
yeah. Well, for 2 weeks I started to lose my eyesight, and I thought I was, and they couldn't figure out why because they hadn't found the lymphoma yet. So for
Mm.
that 2 week period, I couldn't post anything. I couldn't see my phone. But what I did was have my husband set it up so that my phone would always go into selfie record camera video mode. So every time I picked up my phone and I swiped, I could tell and get myself into selfie mode. So I was filming the
Okay.
whole thing that was happening. Even though I couldn't
Wow.
see, I knew kind of roughly where to hold my phone. And I was like
Yeah.
so today the doctor said da, da, da. So I was kind of recording like a little diary, if you will. And then
Wow.
from that journey of 2 weeks of not know, to see and going through everything I went through, when my daughter came from Chicago, my social media buddy, okay, she was like, we have to post something. All your followers, mom. And she's looking at my account. She's like, they're wondering where you are. It's been 2.5 weeks. You haven't posted anything. I'm like, all right, we're going to string together some of my videos so we could tell this story. So we made a 7-minute video of all of what I had gone through in that past 2 weeks and the ups and downs, the diagnosis, I mean, I had celebrities commenting on that video. It was a
Wow.
7-minute video that went viral, which is unheard of. But it was really letting everyone in after I had had the diagnosis, because it was hard for me. Couldn't post anything, couldn't see, couldn't caption.
Right.
And my husband's not social media. Like, I couldn't count on him for that. He's great at it.
Yeah,
Setting up the
we all have our
apartment so I could
strengths, and
live.
usually we line up with someone who's got opposite for good
Exactly.
reason, right?
For a good reason.
Yeah.
He set the apartment up so I could find everything when I needed it, but he was not going to post. So when we did post that, it was then I just like opened that door and I was like, so this is what's happening, and we're going to see where it goes now. So I didn't post until I had an official diagnosis, because I wanted to make sure that I had a whole story, not just
Oh,
like today's
sure.
this piece, tomorrow. And then once I had that, posted it, I was taking everybody on for the ride, and I was determined it was going to be a truthful ride, and that
Yeah.
was my responsibility.
I mean,
I
when
felt
you
I took it on like a responsibility, really.
yeah, and that is, we hear this all the time in business, like, oh, people buy from people, they don't buy the product. And this thing
Mm,
is like, the more you share of yourself, it's like you're becoming more and more important to people because they know your whole story.
right.
And now it's like we're rooting for Helen, and
Oh,
not just, it's no longer about, oh, I care as much about learning this TikTok thing, which is helpful
right.
and I'm glad to, but it's like, I want to know what's going on,
Right.
and how's she rocking the hair today, because that's been
I
a whole
know the
journey.
hair. Oh God.
And it's,
I know.
yeah,
I'm laughing because I was thinking, talk about owning your awkward. Who knew how awkward things were going to get when I started owning my awkward by just
right.
turning the camera. Next thing you know, I'm shaving my head. I'm in with a hospital robe on. I mean, really. But I think that it just because of the feedback, the confidence I had to do it was
Hmm.
was really a crossover from wanting to do it to feeling responsible to do
Yeah.
it. That it was part of what I was meant to do, and
And
I truly feel that deeply.
yeah, one of the most touching videos that I saw that was recent was you were on the beach talking about your hair and
Oh,
how much positive support you're beginning about how it looks and how you're rocking it. And I do love it. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh my God,
and
she is rocking that. But to hear you say how it
oh,
doesn't matter how much good stuff people say, it's still not
I
easy,
know,
but you're still coming into the look and deciding if this is going to be it or it's going to be different.
right?
And that's not easy. And it doesn't matter what we say other than
I
just,
know.
we're here with you, and we hear
Yeah,
you and see you and love you. And we hope that
you're
you
gonna make
are in
me
a good
cry.
place.
You're gonna make me cry again. But
Oh,
I will tell you, I tell you what I did learn, and this is such a good lesson, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I was like, I have to make sure I get this across. But the fact that my point was that thousands of people can tell you something, and
mhm,
if you have your own conviction, you are going to believe you and not thousands.
right,
So I was trying to say, like, it works with the negative. So if thousands of people are telling you your hair looks like shit, you have to believe your hair looks like shit. Or so even the
right,
bad stuff, I'm just saying like the opposite is true. So for me, it even didn't work with the positive. Like, people were telling me it
hmm,
looks great, and I was like, but I look in the mirror and I'm like, what? So no matter what people tell you, bad or good, it's if you're strong enough in your own conviction, that's who you need to believe. So
yeah,
I was trying to, I was really trying to get across that I'm not looking for people to like try and convince me this is good. That's not wasn't the purpose of the video. It was right
exactly.
just to say you have to believe in your soul, in
Hmm.
and that's who you're supposed to believe first and foremost.
That just made me think of, I have this thing that I talk about sometimes when I'm speaking about how the words that other people use are just lighter fluid. Like, they can
Mm.
douse you with stuff, but you're the spark, and it's not going to catch on fire if
Uh,
you don't light the fire. And I've used that thinking more about the negative things people are saying, but at the same time, I hadn't thought about it as, it doesn't matter how much positive things people are saying. If you don't
yeah.
believe it, you're
Oh
not
my
going to
God.
light the
Yeah.
fire in your spirit, or the good fire.
Yeah. And I will say that the positivity helps, because just like I said, hearing all the positive gives you more confidence, and it's like, yeah, let's go.
Right.
So it's helped me to, it's really almost been therapeutic, like to read all those things and say, all right, maybe I'm just seeing this not the way it really is. Let me just try and like own it. And then when I got the Annie
Right.
Lennox and I did that little, oh, and that bold glamour filter, forget it. I was like
Mhm.
so loving it. I'm sorry, but people could hate on that filter all they want. I love dressing up for Halloween. I always have. So you put
Yeah.
that filter on me and I am a badass bitch and I'm taking it. So
Yeah.
I just had so much fun. Like it's almost like the filter even gave me more confidence to move forward
Mhm.
with this hair. Because I was like, well, I love it when I'm wearing the filter. Why can't I love it without the filter too? So
Right.
there's so many things that people take negative about social media, but they can feed you the other way because seeing myself with that filter, I actually feel better about my hair. Isn't that weird? And I not without the
Right.
filter on, I feel better about it. So
Yeah, and the thing
yeah,
is, like, people like to hate on filters and everything, but they are, it's like you said, dressing up for Halloween. Like they're not. We have to know it's a
we
filter. The
know
problem
it's
is if,
fake. Like,
yeah,
come
the
on,
problem
you
is if
know
we're
this.
saying this is me and that's the only thing we're ever putting out there. But when we're saying, look at what this one did to me, and look at what this one looks like, and now I'm bald, and now I have a teenage look, and now I'm 30 years
I'm
older.
the purple hair. Yeah, it's just fun. I mean, I said, like, people will come in there were some negative comments when I was teaching how to use the bold filter and I was doing it with the
Mhm.
bold filter on, which was, I
Yeah.
like to do the lesson. So I'm getting a little more creative with my lessons because I'm like, I don't want to just teach the lesson. So I did the lesson with the filter on, which was really fun. And then halfway through the lesson, I turned it off, whatever. So I have a lot of fun being creative with that. But there were some negative comments like, oh, just be real. This just shows that you're a big lie. And I'm thinking, well, then I won't dress up next Halloween. Are you going to dress up? Like, because my thing and how I
Right.
look at it is it's just like a little bit of costume play. Like, aren't we having fun now? Being
Yeah.
Annie Lennox.
Yeah. And I'm at the point too where I celebrate every negative comment because I'm just like, I must be making it. If I'm
Yeah,
getting
yeah, yeah.
hate, then I'm doing well. Like, yes, thank
It's
you
so
for
true.
giving me some engagement.
It's the
Um,
best.
like it's just like, okay, well, and even when I have like spam people calling me to try and get me to do the thing that is obviously, a
Stupid spam. Yeah.
gimmick thing, and I'm just like, okay, that is the wave before the real people. Like if they're finding me, that's like the little trickle right before the tsunami of the thing. And
I love to be like sarcastically say thank you to those comments. Like, oh, thank you so much. I can't wait to get wealthy. When it's like
yes,
you got, where you're
yeah.
waiting for your dream. Oh, good. I'm so excited. Can't wait to meet. You know,
And yeah, I'm very much a fan of sarcasm too. It's and it
so
just
fun.
keeps and oftentimes it keeps the engagement going, which actually drives up the post
Yes.
because sometimes people will be like, "That's not what I meant," and
You know.
uh, yeah,
Yeah,
so
no, let them keep commenting because those that
yeah,
come. I will say, what I've learned about engagement on social media, just for a little bonus tip, well, since I am the teacher, is
hmm
that I notice that engagement when people save or share your video versus comment and like your video, the video will get way more views. So it gets pushed out further if people save it and share it versus because I'll have a video that has like 2,000 comments, like that one about my hair on the beach,
right,
like thousands of comments. Couldn't even answer all the comments, but
yeah,
then but it had maybe like a couple hundred people saved it, let's just say. But then I'll have a tutorial where 2,000 people will save it for later, but maybe there's only 500 comments. That video will go way more viral.
wow,
So it's higher rated in my experience over and over again if your video is
interesting,
saved. So I always think about that when I'm making a piece of content. I'm like, well, this one isn't going to be saved. This one's just for fun. So I know it's not going to hit, you know?
right,
But I think that if you think about that for people who are interested in understanding TikTok a little better, you want to make sure you put some content out that is why do you save content? Think about that and then maybe make your video with that intention. I don't
yeah,
know.
and
Just,
that's a good point because the tutorials are the ones that I have saved because like, oh, I'm going to come
right.
back to this,
Yeah.
and one thing on a side note that's super fun is I think it happened for the first time with one where you were showing how to do the running through the mirror
Oh my
tutorial.
God.
And this is the first
I'm
one where I saw
such a
the
dork.
tutorial, and then a couple days later, I saw your video of just you running through the mirror, and I'm like,
Oh,
that's so cool. I saw how she like it was you doing the video that you showed us how to make,
oh
and
my
because
God.
of the algorithm, who knows which one actually was
Yes.
posted
Came
first.
first. Yeah.
But the order in which I saw it is like, oh, this is so fun. It's like
It's so
she's not
funny.
just doing tutorials; she's actually doing the videos.
Yes, and let's just talk about that because I get up there and I will make whatever stupid faces. Sometimes I look at those lessons and I'm like, I am the biggest nerd, or I am so ridiculous, or I look so bad at that angle. Please, but I still post it. I'm like, I don't care.
Mhm.
I'll say that's like, oh, my double chin, whatever.
Right?
And
Yeah.
I think in days of old, because we're talking about awkward, I might have not posted that, and now I do not care. I literally of course I care. I don't want to look ridiculous. My point is, it does not stop me from posting it. So even though I don't like it and I'm like, oh, next time I'm going to pay attention to that, I'll maybe improve it for next time, but it won't stop me. And I
Yeah.
think that's another way of owning your awkward, is like admitting it. You don't like it. It's uncomfortable, but you're going to move past it, put it out there, and then you're just going to improve it for next time. You're
Yeah.
going to think about that for next time. So
And it's still part of you. And so I'm
yeah.
I'm curious, when you got started, were there some videos that you wouldn't post or that you didn't, that you would skip over? Did it take you a while to get to that, or has that been a rule from the beginning?
No, it's been a
Okay.
rule from the beginning. And I still will say, when I go back and look at videos, I always go, oh my God, maybe I should delete this. Because if somebody does scroll all the way back in my feed and there's one, oh my God, it was the pandemic. I put these big shoes on. I put like the miniest skirt on with this gold black, did my hair. And I was like doing that trend, whatever it was, like it was an early trend in 2020. I laugh so hard when I see it, and I'm like, I should take this down. I look like some kind of like a hussy wussy, I don't know what. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna. If somebody takes the time to go find me back that far, they deserve to see that
Right.
shit.
And also there's something that I think we forget about, how much people love to be a part of the growth and the journey.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they're like, I was following her when this, and you should see
Mm,
the difference. And we see people upgrade their studio or their camera, and it's like, oh yeah, if you watch the earlier videos,
right.
and then they feel like they're part of your team because they're like, well, I was following her when
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
this
It's
happened.
so
Or
true. It's so true. Like you're early. I call them like the kindergarten friends, but because
Mhm.
you have your grade school friends and then you have the people you met in college or whatever. So I always think about TikTok like that. It's like my early followers are like my kindergarten friends, and then like I have the middle school friends that knew me when I was doing baking videos and so. And I was
Right.
thinking, you're almost prompting me to do it now, but I almost feel like I should duet one of my old baking videos just for a goof and be like,
Oh,
this
funny.
is where I started.
Right.
That would be so funny
Be
because
like,
a few
girl, you're
people go,
messing
I
that
know.
up. What are you thinking? Like, don't do it that way.
That's so funny. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
that
Might
would
have
be
to do
fun to
that.
see.
Might
Yeah,
have to
I've
do it.
I've thought about doing that. I had a speaking gig that I did not too long ago, and I messed up my punchline. The audience still got the point, and it worked. It just, there was a dull laugh instead of, I
What you wanted.
I was like,
Yeah.
I could have had a bigger laugh, and I thought I should almost go a green screen myself in front of that video and critique.
Critique.
Be
That's a
like,
great idea.
did you
That's a
hear
great
that?
idea.
Like, that's not what I was supposed to say. And um, I
That's a
just
good
read this.
idea. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's kind of fun, and it also, I think it opens up to the world what's going on in your head, because people see the polished and they don't see the mistakes that
Right. I
they
love
gloss
that.
over. I just read a book that I met the author in Chicago at an event I was at, and she said, I feel like we're really aligned in some ways. I want you to please take my book and read it. And it was the first time I've read a book on the entire flight, just like from beginning
Oh,
to end. But it was called Fire Your Narrator.
oh
And
my gosh.
and I
That's a
thought it was
brilliant
just,
title.
yeah, and it was
The voice in your head.
yeah, and it
Right.
talks about all the different, like 10 different styles of narrators and how they work against you, and we all probably have a little combination of a couple different styles. But I'm reading this book going, damn, I needed this book like in middle school,
Oh, oh, right. Right. We all needed that stuff in middle school. My goodness.
But
So cute.
but I think of that when you're talking about like re-looking at this like baking video where it's in live time, and you're like, that's actually what could have been going on in my head in the moment.
Right. In the moment. Yeah. Oh, I like your idea of critiquing your own video too. I think you should do that.
I'm
I
gonna,
think you,
I'll have to get on
I put
that.
put that on your list. I'm giving you the challenge.
I will.
The
I'll
teacher is
make sure I
giving you the
send it to
challenge.
you when I get it done. It's like, okay,
Please,
yeah. So
please do.
so what is the best way people can support you with everything you have going on? I mean, obviously following you on TikTok, you're on some other social media.
Yeah, so let me give you the download. What I ended up doing from getting from TikTok is I was approached by a venture capital company, believe it or not, to build a business around my teachings.
Mm.
And so I created a website, and it's all free, by the way. It's a free platform, hellosocialize.com, where I post tutorials, I have workshops, I host them live. So there are people, in there kind of in the chat asking me questions, and I teach a full lesson for an hour, and then each one gets posted. You have to create a username and password to access the workshops, just because I want to make sure that people are. I'm gathering some information
Right.
before I releasing free information. But I have about 6 workshops up there now, and I do one every month. And the next step is going to be classes. So I'm going to have beginner, slower pace because you like how I teach in a more of a slow manner. And some people even think the way I teach TikTok is still too fast. So
Mm.
I'm going to try and maybe I'll try an Instagram kind of more slow for beginners. And then the same thing for TikTok, have a couple of slower classes. So that is my platform. And we also, within that platform, we send out the weekly newsletter that I mentioned.
Mhm.
So if you create a username and password, you automatically get that weekly newsletter that gives you all ideas. I respond to the messages. We created a Facebook group for the business. So Socialize has its own Facebook group. And my daughter and I are working on that together. So funny enough, separately, we just launched a podcast, and it is International Women's Day as the day this is being recorded.
Yes.
Do you want me to take that out? Do you
No,
edit these
that's,
podcasts? Okay,
you know
it
what?
doesn't even matter.
I call this the accidental brilliance of my brand, in that anything awkward happens, I'm like, we're owning it. And
Perfect. Okay. So since we're recording on International Women's Day, we do have a podcast that we did together, and it's a mother-daughter podcast, completely separate from our business, which talks about our journeys and how I want to try and help her become less awkward because I have more experience. I can help her, and how it was like for her growing up with her mom in production. So we talk, each episode has a different topic and it's mother-daughter related. And
I
that is
love
called
that.
yours truly the podcast. So we
Gotcha.
have that, and you can put that in
So
the
y'all are
notes
listening to
as
this
well.
on a podcast platform. So finish the
Yes.
episode, but click
Oh
follow on that
gosh.
as well.
No, it's really funny. I did an experiment, and you could just search yours truly Helen, and it literally comes up. So
Nice.
because there's a lot of yours truly's when you do a search,
Sure.
but when you put my name, it comes right up to the top. So
Okay,
if you're listening and you want to
that's
hop on the
good.
next one, go for it.
I love that name. That's such an easy way to, it's just relatable. It's easy to remember. And
Well, own your awkward, Is that's for sure.
well, thank you. And the thing is, it's a good reminder that we never stop being parents and being able to be a resource
Mhm.
to our kids, because we're always further ahead than them in the journey.
Yeah, we are. And they have to make their own mistakes. So it's not like I can tell her, don't do this and don't do that. You know, it's more like the kind of the cool thing that came out of it for me is hearing her perspective because we sat down face to face with microphones and we like had a heart to heart talk. And I learned things about
Mm,
her that how of what she thought of me when I was a working mom. And then we talk about
yeah.
that. And there's tears because there's times that I was sacrificing things and I wasn't getting home in time and how
Hmm.
she would write me these notes. So we have like really have a heart to heart.
Mm.
And she talks about me being a role model. I mean, this is like beautiful. It's just beautiful content. And it's also, I just think it's empowering that I can have had an impact on another female in that way. That's my own daughter.
Right.
Usually moms and daughters got, combative. So it's really kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your videos where you mentioned, I remember like the first one where it's like, oh, there's a daughter, like she's helping, and I remember whatever it was, there was something where you're like, my daughter told me to do this or challenged me to do that, and one of them you're in a hotel room, you're like, she's on a podcast over there, and I'm going over here to record a video. It's just so fun to watch the whole thing.
I know she's like, mom's on another Zoom call.
My
We
mom
have
on
some good,
TikTok.
right? It's
Yeah.
really funny. We even talk about that because she's like, I'm the TikTok famous one. And she's like, people ask me if I'm jealous. And I'm like, I'm not jealous. I'm proud of you more than anything. So it's
Yeah.
just like it's just an interesting, fun thing that we're doing as well.
And now I'm
Really
not going to
enjoying
ask you to give up any of your awesome content on your podcast, but this is running into my head now.
Go ahead.
Um, what lessons have you learned from your daughter? As we talk about being
Ah,
parents and sharing.
that's so interesting. Okay, so let me just flip the switch here. Here's what she's really, really, really good at, and I fail miserably at, and that is planning and organizing. And it seems like, oh, you've been a producer. Weren't you a planner and organizer your whole career? Kinda for work. But now looking back, it wasn't my solid skill set as much as it's hers. I see her about to tackle something and she's got like a spreadsheet. It's analyzed. She'll plan even with the business. She's literally the chief operating officer of Host Socialize because I'm the creative one. I'm like running around doing
Okay.
I'm willing to do anything. She's keeping us on track. She's like, this is what we have to do this week. This is what we have to do that
Mm,
way. So what I've learned from her is putting things into better compartments because my wheel spinning ends up making things take a lot longer. And she's
mm.
like, this is what you're going to do. We don't have to be texting at night about work because you're going to, this is what you need to tackle before the end of the day. And I'm like, oh, so I've learned to be more organized for my own kids.
She was like, turn it off, mom. Go make some content.
She gives me a list of here's the tutorials you need this week. I'm like, okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
So cute. Yeah. So it's really great. It's
I
really
love
great.
that. And it's fun to see that you can keep it fun while it is still work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's important because I think with any startup, if you start getting too in, it becomes too much of a job. Like that's not the reason you did this. I was saying that I was recently in a sauna and I was listening to a podcast where they asked the question, if you didn't have to work, if you had all the money in the world and you didn't have to work, would you still do what you're doing in
Mm,
terms of probably your
yeah.
job? And I thought about that long and hard because I love directing commercials and I love production, but I probably would give that up quicker because the hours are long. Sometimes there's like the stressful calls and there's a lot of the client, kind of stuff that comes with that, but I would not stop teaching social media. And when I had that epiphany in the sauna, I realized that I am so on the right path because
Yeah.
it feeds me whether I make money at it or not.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm determined to keep the platform free so people can learn for free. Hopefully I can build a community, provide things to people so they don't have to pay for it, but then potentially have advertisers interested in engaging with my audience in some way. And I have really creative thoughts on how I'm going to do that going
That's
forward.
awesome. Well, it's so neat to see someone like you have such unique perspective coming out of production and then
Mm-hmm.
into this. Most people, are getting into social media with the goal of someday being that production level person. And this is
Right.
that's where you're like,
The opposite,
that life
right?
I've been there, and this is freeing and fun, and I'm loving it.
Right.
Um, and that makes me wonder, like, as how is that transition where and without having a production background, my perception of it is that everything that you do is polished, it's edited, it's planned, you've got studio time where
Mm-hmm.
you have actors, and then you go into this world where all of the content is just, it is what it is.
That's what makes it so much fun because with all of those things comes people and approvals and like the set has to be approved by these people, the cameraman has to be, we have to know that he has this stuff on his reel, so none of that is easy to execute. It's all more of a curated process, whereas when I pick up the phone I can do whatever I want and I can make it, and because I have those skills and I know what angles are good and I know what how to make it cut well, I don't need all the bells and whistles. Like I have the knowledge, and so
Right.
all I need now is this, and it's like amazing. It just feels like it's so freeing, and that's what makes it so much easier. So, I mean, I think that's what I enjoy about it because I can take all of that learning, and it's now in the palm of my hand, and I love
Yeah.
it.
That is, the tools are scary. They're scary good.
I was talking about recently on one of my workshops. I was talking about green screen. This is a great example, like how it used to be green screen and stop motion, two of the thorns in production. At back in the day, make sure the green screen is lit perfectly. Everything has to be right. God forbid this hair was with a green screen; it would be
Oh,
forever to rotoscope around my head to get me
okay.
off the green screen. Literally, all the tips and tricks that I learned, and all the time spent green screen, and then editing it and rotoscoping it out. Then the same thing with stop motion, making sure the camera's locked. Nobody moved. People shouting at us all day if we were shooting stop motion. Nobody could even walk in the studio because it was like that precise.
Wow.
And now we have literally a button on a TikTok where we
Mhm.
can cut out ourselves and be on a green screen, where we can move a product, tap the screen, move a product, tap the screen, tap the screen, and then press the record button and it strings it all together. That used to take hours upon hours of filming and then days of editing. And I just feel like I have seen that. So I have experienced both sides of that. And that's
Mhm.
why when I was teaching one of my early viral videos was teaching a stop motion lesson. And I was so giddy with this lesson. People like, oh, she's crazy. Like they must have thought I was crazy, but I was like, do you understand? Like this used to take hours. I was
Right.
like, so
Like I don't think y'all appreciate it, just how easy
no,
this is. We're all going, this is hard, and you're like, no, this is not
you
hard.
have no idea. Yeah, yeah. So that was just kind of cool for me because I have that perspective of knowing what it used to be and how it is now. And so
Mhm.
it just gives me such joy that it's so easy to do that I can make a stop
Yeah.
motion video in like
You're
five
like,
minutes flat.
I can do this from the back seat of the cab. I can
And
do it from my couch while a
it's
movie's
so much
playing.
fun.
Like, yeah,
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. So there is a good reason why I love it, I think. To seeing that
Yeah. Oh,
from where I came to now.
yeah. I think that our things that are difficult make us appreciate what we have, whether it's,
Yeah.
you know, hard work or a task that's difficult, or, the hardest things like facing cancer, where you're just like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, it's things we don't ever wish we have to experience or anyone has to
Right.
experience. But when you come through it, it's a beautiful thing.
My perspective on that was, so because of the blindness, was pretty unique. And I think that's what helped me stay positive is once I had the diagnosis and they were able to do the radiation on my eyes, I had my eyesight back. So I felt like I could tackle anything now that I could
Wow.
see. So I was kind of on a high from being able to see. So when I
Yeah.
went into chemo, it was like not even the worst thing. I never really thought about like, oh, dying. And this is why, because to me, blindness was worse than death. Like that's what
Mm.
I was experiencing because of what I do and how I see
Yeah.
the world. And just my, my whole being of being so video focused, to be able to not have sight was more scary. So I
Yeah.
felt like that was almost like a mini gift to have that, so that I could not be depressed about cancer or get down
Mm.
about it, because I was like, oh, I can see, I'm good, I can
You
see
could
the needles
literally see
going in.
the wow. That's such a
So
beautiful
yeah,
perspective.
it was really
Wow.
helpful. I think that had to happen in that order for me to be able to live it the way that I did without going into a dark hole. So
Yeah. It's like that being so much worse gave you the power to
yeah.
just push through and be like, well, I have already experienced my worst hell in this
Yes,
situation.
that's
So
it.
yeah.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
I experienced what I thought was worse than death, which is
Yeah.
crazy to say that out loud.
Oh my
But
gosh. Yeah.
yeah, it was, I see the world so differently now. I mean, I even disability, to have experienced it firsthand,
Hmm.
like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very, I'm all about accessibility now, even more so than I was before, because I've now
Mhm.
lived it in a weird way. Like just, oh,
Yeah.
so I'm always like captions on my videos every single time. I don't want to
Hmm.
miss that, because
Yeah.
I'm just so like, people that navigate the world with a disability, they are just heroes to me. Incredible.
No, that's a really good thing to remember because when you go through the world and life without needing any accommodation, you don't realize how important it is. And it's like, oh, you know
Mm,
what? Someone else wants to experience this same thing. They're trying to experience it.
right.
And by just a couple easy clicks of a button
Yeah.
or, you know, not parking over the front of a curb cutout where someone needs to drive through it with a scooter, it's like we can make
Yes.
very
Basic.
simple
It's
actions
so easy.
that make the world better for a lot of other people. So
So true. So true. Well said.
well, I could just talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I know you have a million more TikToks to make and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So before we go, Helen, I would just love to hear just you've given us so many amazing things. I hate to even ask for more, but what would just be kind of your sum up of how someone could just best own their awkward?
I think it's here's my little here's my truth. If you're feeling awkward about something and you think about someone who loves you the most in your life, or whoever is your most supportive person, or think about doing that thing in front of that person,
Mm,
and are they going to love you the same? Are they going to support you the same? So if you think about anything that you're doing and you just think about doing it for that person who's the most supportive, I think it really provides freedom to you to like allow yourself to own your awkward, because that person isn't judging you. So why would you judge yourself? Move on.
I
Be.
love that. That is beautiful, and it kind of relates right back to how you approach what you do, where you're like, there's that one person in the room that needs
Mm,
to hear from you, and
yeah.
you
And you know
know,
what my daughter said on the podcast recently, by the way? She actually said when she makes her TikToks, because she's way more reserved than me, when
mhm.
she's like funny and out there, and she was taking a stand-up comedy class, so I don't know how I could say she's reserved, but she is a bit more reserved when
Uh-huh.
you first meet. But she says when she makes her TikToks, she thinks about that she's doing it with to me or her boyfriend, because those are
Oh,
the two people in her life that she's
yeah.
most comfortable. So
Wow.
it's like interesting that that's probably why that came into my head, because she had said it. And I think I probably feel the same way. Like I think about the person. So just that's a really good piece of advice. And I think it works for young people and older people. For young people, especially, think about the person who's never going to laugh at you, who's always going to be your supporter, and
Yeah.
be that person and own your awkward for the world in that way.
I love that. And I think sometimes we develop the tool or we develop the thing, but until we're asked or put on the spot, we don't really articulate what it is.
Mm,
And like, oh wait, that's what I'm doing.
right, right.
I love
Fabulous.
that. Well, Helen
You're
Polise,
awesome.
thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this, and everybody else, be sure you're following her, learning all the good things,
Learn
laughing,
the good
crying,
things.
just living
Yes,
life and doing it together in a community. It's beautiful.
it is. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. This is so different than any other podcast I've participated in. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, and everybody else, be sure to go out there today and own your awkward.
Do it.
Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.